Welcome back, guys. Happy Monday to everybody. We got quadrilateral properties that we're going to do today. Now, today is going to be a really quick video because we really don't have too much to talk about. As you can see here, this is it. This is the slide that will be uploaded for you to take a look at and use. But we're going to now be looking at quadrilaterals. We're going to be identifying them today. So you'll notice on the left side, we've got the trapezoids. Okay, quadrilaterals just means it's got four sides. So now we're looking at different four-sided shapes. When it comes to the trapezoids, they only have one pair of parallel sides. Now, the parallel sides are going to be big for a lot of these shapes, as well as whether sides are congruent and whether we have right angles. That's really going to be the big differentiators between what we have. We do see they talk about the diagonals a little bit. Those will be coming up, but more of what we're going to look at today is the sides that are parallel, the sides that are congruent, and the angles that we've got in them. Now, the issues that are going to come up is there will be some times where you can classify these quadrilaterals as multiple ones of what we have. So you'll see in the assignment today, I'll go through that with you, and we'll see what we mean with that. But starting with just the trapezoids, we can see over there they have one pair of parallel sides and the other set of sides are not parallel. So if we take a look, and I'll make sure to give us a nice little drawing here for these. But if we notice, these sides are going to be the parallel sides. So we've got, let's make sure we can get these drawings in here. We've got our parallel sides as the ones that are on the top and the bottom. Oh, that's why it doesn't look like. There we go. There's our parallel sides. Now notice when we've got the sides that are not parallel, and we'll erase those right now. The sides that are not parallel, remember, just means if we kept extending them, they would be the ones that would eventually run into each other. So those are the sides that we have as parallel or not parallel on our trapezoids. The only thing that's going to change for our trapezoids is we can't have, as you can see, an isosceles trapezoid. Isosceles means the same thing as it did with triangles here. It means we've got two sides that are congruent. For us, it's going to be the legs that are on our isosceles trapezoids. You'll notice the ones on the left and the right, those would be the ones that would be our isosceles, or what makes it isosceles for what we have here. Now, going over to the right side, that's more of what we're going to be focusing on today. So parallelograms are where we start. Basically, every quadrilateral that we're going to be classifying is a type of a parallelogram. Now, the parallelogram is only a parallelogram because the opposite sides are parallel and the opposite sides are congruent. The opposite angles are congruent as well, but that's basically going to be the same with all of our shapes that we have here. Now, looking at the parallelogram, you can see when we're looking at these shapes in pictures, we're going to use the arrows. Remember, the arrows on sides mean that they are parallel, and we'll see those examples in the assignment. I'll make sure to point those out. And don't forget, if we see lines, those straight up and down lines through the sides, that means the sides are congruent. So those marks are coming back, all those congruency marks that we learned about are coming back to help us identify these quadrilaterals that we have. Now, if we notice, we've also got, and we'll scroll up a little bit, we've also got our rhombus and rectangles. Now, it says rhombi, but for us, a single rhombi is a rhombus. So the rhombus is going to be a parallelogram. Notice the biggest difference is all four sides are congruent. So all four sides are the same length. That is not what we have in the parallelogram. In the parallelogram, just the opposite sides are congruent, not all four. So if all four are congruent, it will be a type of parallelogram, which is a rhombus. Now notice with rectangles, the big difference here, we've still got the opposite sides that are congruent, just like our parallelogram, but the difference here is that we have our four right angles. So notice now the rectangle is different from the rhombus because the sides are not all congruent, but it is different in the sense that all four angles are right angles. Now, if we notice, they then come back down to the square. The square is going to be a combination of everything. It's got all four sides are congruent, all angles are right angles, both opposite sides are going to be parallel. It's going to be the combination of every single type that we have. So these are what we're going to use to determine what we have in terms of whether our quadrilateral is a parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, square, trapezoid, or even a kite. And a kite we'll get into. We shouldn't see those in our assignment today, but if we do run a long one, I will make sure to talk about that. The biggest thing with the kites is that they're consecutive sides. So sides that are touching, those are the ones that are congruent. So now here we go, getting to the Khan Academy assignment that you do have today. That one going to be due 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. You do have one still with triangles from last week. I extended that one to tomorrow as well, so you've got time to get that one done. Now, if we notice here, it says all parallelograms have opposite sides that are equal in length and parallel. So it's telling us what we have here, and then it asks which of these is a parallelogram. So if it's a parallelogram, it's got opposite sides that are parallel and opposite sides that are congruent. Remember, these arrows right here mean those sides are parallel. So this has opposite sides that are parallel, because since this has 2 and this has 2, they're parallel. This has 1 and this has 1, they are parallel. So this one is a parallelogram. If we notice here, this next one only has one set of sides that have those arrows there. The right angles really don't mean anything to us right now, because that's not going to help us determine whether this is a parallelogram or not. But since we only have one set of sides that are going to be parallel, this is not a parallelogram. This one would be a trapezoid. And then if we notice in the third one, there are no arrows in any of those, meaning there are no sides that are parallel, meaning this is not a parallelogram. This right here is what a kite would look like. So these are going to be our general kites. They're also known as diamonds, but that's going to be what we're looking at there. So that gets us the first question. Now taking a look at the next one. Now here it's just saying what kind of quadrilateral is shown. So notice, if we look at this right away, hopefully we're all going to look at it and say that's a rectangle. 100% that's a rectangle. But we have to check the others to see if it does work for those. Now, if we're having problems, you can click Remind Me About Shapes, and it'll list what each one of these should have. So if it's got these, in other words, the parallelogram has 2 sets of parallel sides. This does have 2 sets of parallel sides, so it would also be a parallelogram. The rectangle has the 4 right angles. Well, we see our 4 right angles here, so we've got that. That's why we've clicked rectangle. If we go to rhombus, rhombus has all sides of equal length. If we look at this is 8, 4, 8, and 4. Those are not all the same length, so it's not a rhombus. We're not going to highlight that. And then the square would be the combination of all those. Well, since the sides are not equal, it does have 4 right angles, but notice, has to have that and the sides of equal length. So it doesn't, so we'll continue through here, and that would just be those 2 answers. Now, here we go. We're looking at which ones of these quadrilaterals are rectangles. So remember that with rectangles, that's going to be all side or opposite sides are equal length and parallel, and it's got the 4 right angles. So if we go here, no right angles in this first one, so this is not a rectangle. We have no right angles in the second one. This also would not be a rectangle. The key is that we're looking for these boxes. It doesn't matter what it looks like. If it looks like a right angle and it doesn't have the box there, it's not a right angle. This one does have the boxes in all 4, so that would be a rectangle there. And then last but not least, we have what kind of quadrilateral is shown in the shape below. So again, we'll just go through. Do we have a parallelogram? Yes, the opposite sides are parallel. The opposite sides are congruent. They're all congruent, but that still means the opposite sides are congruent. So here, now we're going to a rhombus. Do we have opposite sides that are parallel? Yes. Do we have all 4 sides that are the same length? Yes. So this is a type of rhombus. Now when we get to rectangle, does it have 4 right angles? Yes, it does. Are the opposite sides parallel and congruent? Even though they're all the same length, they're still going to be congruent on the opposite side. So this would be a rectangle as well. And then when we get to square, it would be a square because it's still got the 4 right angles. It's still got all 4 sides that are congruent, so it's a combination of everything. So notice, if it is a square, it is also a rectangle, it is also a rhombus, and it is also a parallelogram. And that's what I was talking about before when we talked about how these can be more than one. Now that is going to be it for your assignment today. If you have any questions, there will be a Google Hangout that I will post in just a little bit. But with that, have a happy Monday and make sure we get our assignments done.